What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I want to introduce you guys to our latest build. This is a 1996 GMC Sierra. This body style of truck is known as an OBS, old body style, so I will be referring to it as an OBS. I've been wanting to build a single cab truck for a while. I had another one of these that was LS swapped, and it wasn't the truck that I wanted to build, but I wanted to see if it was a truck I would like. So ended up finding this truck, and lo and behold, the guy had just painted it, and he painted it teal and gray. This was an original teal truck, and he added the gray, and this is actually a color from a Lexus. So you won't see another one with the same color scheme, and it was kind of perfect for our company colors. So we're actually going to be taking this to the body shop to change some things visually, and we're going to be paint matching the front end. We're getting rid of these beautiful chrome mirrors, so if you want these, be sure to leave a comment. And I found a brand new set of old stock 454 SS mirrors that are going to go on here. And then one thing we have done is we converted to a Ford E350 rear bumper, and my buddy Robbie did this for us. There's a guy that makes a kit. His company's called Tricked Toys, and he makes bumper brackets and this license plate box. You cut out the bumper and put the box in. And then we made a filler panel to kind of just fill the space between the back of the bed and the bumper. And so all that will get painted as well. So I am very excited about this build. One of the things I'm the most excited about is we have the very first Speedtech Performance chassis going under this truck. They wanted to get into the OBS market. We were able to get our hands on the first chassis. And so that is what's going under this truck. And we're gonna get into that in this video. We're gonna show you the chassis. We're gonna go over the details of the chassis. If you're not familiar with Speedtech, you're gonna be familiar with them after this video. There's some awesome things that we're doing to this truck that I don't think have been done to an OBS before. So we're gonna go over to our buddy Hayden's house. He's gonna be helping us with the build on this truck. We're gonna sit down with him, go over all the details, share those with you guys. So let's jump into this. All right, everybody, we just got over here to Hayden's. You've seen Hayden in quite a few of our videos with the Mach 1. Yeah. Probably most of my videos, honestly. Yeah. So I guess introduce yourself real quick to everybody.
Yeah, so I'm Hayden. And I've been working with Jared for a long time. You know, when he started Synergy, he kind of brought me on unofficially. Just kind of always been worked on it together, kind of in the background more so than anything. I know.
Yeah, I mean, we're like best friends. Yeah. I mean, so Hayden's always just helped me with my car stuff. Yeah. He's a very talented fabricator. He tries to downplay his skill set, but he is very, very talented.
Talented, little unreliable.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue. But yeah, so Hayden's going to have a big hand in helping with the build. I think the biggest thing, honestly, that Hayden's going to be doing on this, well, I mean, you're going to have a hand in all of it, but the wiring, like that's... Yeah. Wiring is like not my thing at all.
Yeah, and it's actually the thing I love to do the most. Yeah. So I'm extremely excited to get past kind of the initial fabrication stages and get to the wiring.
Yeah, I feel like you just want to start on the wiring.
Yeah,
like
I do.
You're just can I just start wiring the truck already?
Yeah, so, if I could, I would. Trust me.
So I mentioned that we were doing the first ever Speedtech OBS chassis, which is what we have sitting here. So see it in all of its glory. Yeah. This thing is absolutely badass. I think that's like really the only word for it.
Honestly, that's an understatement.
Yes, it is. So initially, you know, we talked about, well, we weren't doing a chassis, right? So we were going to build an OBS. Yeah. We were going to do a factory chassis, all the QA1 front suspension that they sell for it. We were going to do a IRS out of a 5th gen Camaro. They make some brackets. Well, you were going to actually build some brackets.
Yeah, I was going to actually manufacture the brackets. And you actually had a pretty nice setup already bought.
Yeah, I still have it.
Whole G-Force 9-inch rear diff setup out of a 5th gen Camaro.
Yeah. If anybody with the 5th gen Camaro needs a 9-inch setup, I have one that is for sale. Yeah. But this came up for sale. I couldn't find any information about it when I started looking, and that's because there aren't any of them.
Yeah.
So this is the
number one.
This is number one. They built this. They took it to SEMA, I think in 2023, and then it went to the customer that bought it. Jesse from Level 7 had a huge hand. Like he assembled all of this, so he spec'd out the the shocks, the brake package that's on it. I don't know how much he had to do with the design, just because Speedtech already makes a very similar chassis for a lot of other applications. But I guess we'll kind of start at the front and work our way back. Right, so starting at the front of the chassis, one thing that's really cool, it's a small detail, but I like that they did this, and they did this in the front and the back, is they put these tie down points. So if you're towing the truck, it gives you a nice spot to attach a strap to tie it down. If you run off track and they got to tow you out of the grass, you're supposed to have these as a spot for them to be able to, tow truck attached to if your vehicle can't drive, obviously. So that is a really nice thing to have. The front sway bar, which is a spline setup, they tie it into the chassis as well. They run it through this tube here, and all that's welded into the chassis. The spline sway bar is pretty cool. I don't know a lot about it, but you were saying that there's quite a bit of adjustment.
It offers some adjustability to it. We can kind of fine tune the stiffness of it to suit your driving style.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, and one thing that they had told me is the people that make these sway bars actually make the sway bars for NASCAR, so they're pretty legit. The sway bars, I guess the arm, I don't know what you'd call that, but the arm that comes off the sway bar and goes to the end link, it actually has a radius in it, and the reason it's like that instead of just being on an angle is so that you can get more turning radius out of the front end. So you can actually fit a 335 tire on the front of this. You could fit a 355 tire on the back of this. So you could fit a massive tire on this truck. It's got a sweet manufacturing 12-to-1 ratio steering rack. So it's going to be super nimble. It's going to be very responsive. They said it should handle like a go-kart basically. So I'm excited to kind of feel like that steering feel and that input. Probably the thing on the front end that I like the most, well, the truck has it front and rear, is the shocks on the truck. So this truck has JRI canister mounted shocks. And to my knowledge, JRI was started by two guys that used to work for Penske, which if you've ever heard of Penske, I mean, they're like synonymous with the highest level of motorsport racing, especially when it comes to like road racing type stuff.
Road racing, and they're heavy in NASCAR as well.
Okay. Yeah. So these have some pretty badass shocks on it. These are canister mount, so front and rear. So you have these canisters that will have to mount somewhere, and that's they have an adjustment on it for the rebound and the compression. So these are two-way adjustable. They offer a four-way adjustment. If we ever needed to upgrade, we could send them in and do that.
This should be plenty for us for now.
Yeah, I think so. We've
got one cool thing about the canister mount is it does allow more fluid volume inside the shock. Just helps with performance, helps with consistency, and keeping the shock, behaving the same way every single time you go around the track.
Yeah, and it's supposed to, from my understanding, having more volume gives the shock like a wider range of motion, essentially. It's got Wilwood brakes front and rear, so it has 6 piston in the front and 4 piston in the rear. And these rotors are pretty cool. I didn't know a lot about these rotors, but Hayden was kind of telling me a little bit about this earlier.
So it's Wilwood's, it's a newer design from them. Basically, it's a floating rotor. Instead of the rotor, the hat being bolted to the rotor surface, it's actually just held together with a snap ring. We'll go into more detail of that once we can start diving into the car, but it's really, really a cool design. Supposed to help with heat transfer into the bearing, and other stuff like that.
And like one thing you said, if we ever have to change the rotors, it makes it a lot faster.
Yeah, it's way faster. Versus unbolting everything, rebolting it, resafety wiring. It's literally just one big snap ring.
Another thing that's really cool, kind of moving back, your motor mounts, which we're still waiting for the LS adapters. Correct. We have the stands. This chassis was originally, the guy that originally had it was doing a big block, so the mounts were a little bit different. But we have a ton of adjustment front to rear with both the motor and the transmission, which is nice because we can get the motor back as far as we can towards the firewall, kind of help with our weight bias, and also try and get some of that weight, behind the front axle to help with handling as well. Throughout the chassis, you'll see, all these different little stitch welds, and what that is, that's where there's internal gussets that they put in before they plated this, and then they welded all that in. They have kind of this inner frame rail section here just to add more stiffness, and then this cross member with the pass through for the exhaust, which is really cool because all your exhaust will be tucked up, you know, inside of the frame essentially.
Nope.
So we don't have to worry about anything dragging. Nothing will be lower than the chassis. And then I would say like the coolest part.
It's hands down the coolest.
Yeah,
part.
I mean this is the thing that like really sets this chassis over the top. I mean, there's some really nice chassis out there for the OBS trucks. I think this one is probably like on a level of its own at this point, and I think the biggest reason for that is this IRS setup. So this features Speedtech's award-winning IRS. I think you said at SEMA that they won an award for this.
Yeah, it was a featured product at SEMA. I actually went this year and got to check it out.
Oh, nice.
While I was there, and it's the amount of engineering and design that went into this is just second to none. They really knocked it out of the park on that. Yeah,
it's very, very cool. And the cantilever is not just for looks. It actually does serve a purpose. It gives you more suspension travel. It makes it easier to adjust it.
Yeah, to make adjustments on ride height and or dampening. It just puts everything in more accessible space.
Yeah.
Which in this case, it'll be in the bed of the truck, which will also
be kind of cool.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, anytime you see a cantilever coilover setup, it's just rad.
Yeah, I mean, you know, like it's probably a pretty serious vehicle if it's got a cantilever setup in it. It uses a 4 9-inch center section, so it's got a nodular iron center section in it with a 389 gear. We are going to have to change that based on the drivetrain that we're doing. One thing I didn't really touch on, but Speedtech makes their own spindles, front and rear, so they're like a proprietary part to Speedtech. And then they use a C7 wheel bearing assembly, which is like a sealed hub.
Yeah, so it's a sealed bearing. It's all one unit, but the benefit about using the C7 bearings is, for one, they're tried and true, tested, right? You know, GM's put a lot of engineering into the bearings, and they last and they perform well. It's a bolt-in bearing versus a press-in bearing, which from a serviceability standpoint, that's amazing. And then the last nerdy thing about them is they do provide me with an ABS sensor, so I can get wheel speed off of them very easily. So,
yeah, for traction control.
Yep.
Yeah, and this actually uses like Corvette brake setups. So both these Willwood setups, to my knowledge, are for a C7 or C6 Corvette. So you could technically run pretty much any brakes that you could run on a Corvette on this chassis. Has some real beefy axles in it that I believe are made by a company called Dutchman. They make them for Speedtech. I mean, even just the quality of the control arms and all the gusseting and bracing. I mean,
like I said, the engineering and the design that they put in this, everything's thought out, placed very well. Speedtech did an awesome job designing this chassis.
So behind the IRS is actually where the fuel tank will be mounted. There's a couple reasons for that. For one, there's absolutely no room to do it anywhere else on the chassis. It also moves a lot of weight to the back. So obviously trucks are usually pretty light in the back end. Having the IRS helps a lot with that. Having all the fuel back here helps a lot with that as well. My buddy Rick from Rick's Tanks is actually building us a tank for this. He already reached out to Speedtech. He does a lot of tanks for them. So he got all the measurements he needs. So we'll have one of his tanks in here, which is like one of the most badass fuel tanks.
Rick builds some of the nicest fuel tanks, I think.
Yeah, I think there's like
that are on the market.
15 different baffles in it to help with fuel control.
Not to mention, does he do the billet top as well?
He can. Yeah, that is an option that he can do. So we're just doing his triple fuel pump hanger in it. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of an overview of the chassis. You know, I'm sure as we get into more of the build, there'll be other things that'll come up. But what we got to do today is we need to break this thing down and get it ready to go to powder coat. Truck's at the body shop right now, getting some paint work done. So we want to get this thing broken down, get it out, get it powder coated, so that hopefully when the truck's done, we'll have this back from powder coat, and then we can put the cab onto the chassis. Yeah. Hopefully for the final time, so we're not having to.
I'm gonna have to pull it on and off a couple times, but try to keep that to a minimum because it's kind of a pain to.
It's a little nerve wracking.
Yeah,
for sure. So, all right. Well, tell us what you all think about this. I mean, obviously, there's nothing else really out there to compare it to, you know, because it's the first one. But I would love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comment section about what y'all think about the build in general, what y'all think about the chassis. And then let's talk a little bit about, let's jump over and talk a little bit about the motor and transmission setup for this thing.
Yeah, let's do it.